I want people of the world to come to South Africa. Our country will be stronger when people come here to work, live, and travel. But people coming to South Africa must come here legally, and when here, obey our laws. This is not too much to ask.
For decades, the border between Zimbabwe and South Africa has been more than just a line on the map. It has been a lifeline, a source of hope, and at the same time, a flashpoint of hostility. Waves of Zimbabwean migration into South Africa have been shaped by political upheaval, economic collapse, and social pressures that have left countless families searching for survival just across the Limpopo River. Migration is not a new story. In fact, the first large group of Zimbabweans to move south came after Zimbabwe's independence in 1980. But interestingly, this wave was not made up of poor workers fleeing poverty. It was mainly white Zimbabweans who feared life under Robert Mugabe's new black-led government. Thousands of them settled in Cape Town and other South African cities. For the majority of black Zimbabweans, however, it took the fall of South Africa's apartheid regime before they could move in significant numbers. Only then did South Africa, with its growing democracy and need for skilled labor, become an open and attractive destination. The real turning point came in the early 2000s, when Zimbabwe's government under Robert Mugabe launched its fast-track land reform program, seizing white-owned farms without compensation. This policy unleashed an economic disaster. The Zimbabwean dollar collapsed, food shortages spread, and inflation spiraled out of control. South Africa, then experiencing the optimism of the post-Mandela era, became a natural destination for Zimbabweans. At first, it was the educated classes who moved: teachers, nurses, pharmacists, technicians, many of whom were welcomed into universities, schools, hospitals, and government offices. For them, South Africa offered stability, decent pay, and dignity at a time when their own country was crumbling. One such migrant, physics teacher Sula Badza, recalls arriving in 2002 as a sweet landing. Jobs were plentiful, infrastructure worked, and Zimbabweans were not yet seen as a threat. For several years, thousands of Zimbabweans transitioned seamlessly into permanent residency or even citizenship. But this relative welcome did not last. By 2007, Zimbabwe's economy had gone into full-scale collapse. Hyperinflation reached levels so absurd that people needed wheelbarrows of banknotes to buy bread. Political violence escalated around the 2008 elections, with opposition supporters facing brutal attacks. Desperate, hundreds of thousands more Zimbabweans streamed into South Africa. Unlike the earlier wave of professionals, this new wave was dominated by low-skilled workers, domestic helpers, street vendors, mine workers, and mechanics. Many were undocumented, which made them more vulnerable to exploitation, but also more visible in South Africa's struggling economy. This shift marked the beginning of serious hostility. Ordinary South Africans, facing rising unemployment and corruption under President Jacob Zuma, began to see Zimbabweans as competitors rather than contributors. Petty crimes, unemployment, and even littering were often blamed on the Zimbabweans. Landlords were pressured not to rent to them, and suspicion followed them everywhere, from job interviews to traffic lights. Resentment soon exploded into violence. In May 2008, South Africa witnessed one of its darkest episodes of xenophobia. In Alexandra Township, mobs attacked migrants from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Malawi. Dozens were killed, beaten, or burned alive, their homes looted and destroyed. The most haunting image of that period was Ernesto Namuavi, a Mozambican man, burned to death in front of TV cameras while bystanders watched. Zimbabweans, fearing for their lives, began hiding their identities. Many forged South African names, practiced local accents, and carried fake identity papers. Some academics and skilled workers even lost their jobs as new laws pushed employers to prioritize South African citizens. The hostility did not fade. Throughout the 2010s, the South African government tightened immigration rules, while resentment among locals continued to grow. Even though South African law technically allows all residents, documented or not, access to hospitals and schools, in practice, many Zimbabweans face discrimination, bribes, and extortion. For women like Sibongile Jongwe, a mother of 3 living in Johannesburg, even giving birth became a nightmare. She recalls being told to pay a bribe of 4,000 rand just to secure a place in a public hospital's maternity ward. In recent years, hostility towards migrants has taken a more organized and political form. New parties such as Action South Africa, led by Herman Mashaba, have built their platforms around anti-immigration policies. Groups like Operation Dudula, literally Operation Force Out, now actively campaign to remove migrants from communities, regardless of whether they are legal or illegal. For Zimbabweans, this means daily life remains uncertain. Even children born and raised in South Africa are told in classrooms and on playgrounds that they are not real South Africans. The Zimbabwean migration story is not just about economics or politics. It is also about belonging, identity, and dignity. For many, South Africa represents both salvation and rejection. It is a place where one can find work, safety, and opportunity, but also a place where one is reminded every day of being an outsider. The story continues today, as Zimbabwe struggles with persistent economic hardship and South Africa faces its own crises of inequality, corruption, and unemployment. Migration across the Limpopo remains both inevitable and deeply contested. What is clear is that the fates of Zimbabwe and South Africa are intertwined. Each new wave of migration reveals the failures of one state and the tensions within the other. And caught in between are millions of ordinary people, teachers, vendors, mothers, children, whose only crime is the search for a better life.